Imagine a world where a simple scratch on your arm could be a countdown, where a routine tooth extraction might be the last risk you ever take. This isn't a dystopian future. This is the reality we are about to explore. Look around you. The hospitals, the schools, the very infrastructure of our society would be fundamentally different. Without the discovery that changed everything, our existence would be defined by a silent, invisible war. Consider the statistics that frame our modern lives. Average lifespans, survival rates from surgery, the success of cancer treatments. Now, picture those numbers rolling back. The graph on your screen doesn't show a gradual decline, it shows a cliff. Infectious diseases, relegated to the history books in our timeline, remain the leading cause of death. Pneumonia, tuberculosis, septicemia, these are not treatable conditions, they are final diagnoses. The common childhood illnesses we vaccinate against would be just the beginning. Bacterial infections would claim lives at every age, culling the young and the old with impartial efficiency. Now, turn your attention to the field of medicine itself. That operation you scheduled, that procedure you take for granted, becomes a gamble of the highest order. Major surgery, from a routine appendectomy to complex heart surgery, carries a mortal risk not just from the surgeon's knife, but from the infections that almost inevitably follow. The concept of organ transplantation becomes a near impossibility, as suppressing the immune system to prevent rejection would be an open invitation for uncontrollable sepsis. Aggressive treatments like chemotherapy, which wipe out a patient's immune defenses, become untenable. Medicine, in many ways, is forced to retreat. It becomes a discipline of stabilization and palliation, often unable to intervene against the most common killers. The very foundation of modern healthcare is absent, and the entire structure is built on shifting, perilous sand. This is the baseline of our world. This is the starting point of our story. So how does medicine fight back when its most powerful weapons are absent from the arsenal? The answer lies not in miracle cures, but in a return to fundamentals, refined to a brutal, precise art. Look at the surgical theater. It is a place of speed and radical intervention. The goal is no longer just to repair. It is to remove the infected terrain before the enemy can advance. Imagine a severe leg wound. In our world, it's cleaned, stitched, and treated with a course of antibiotics. Here, the calculus is different. The risk of gangrene, of the tissue dying and spreading its poison through the bloodstream, is too great. The response is swift and decisive: amputation. It's a life-altering procedure, but it is the only sure way to stop the progression. This isn't a rare, last resort operation. It is a standard, accepted practice. The halls of hospitals would see more individuals living with the physical evidence of this ongoing war. But what about the battle at the microscopic level, inside the body itself? This is where the science of cauterization is pushed to its limits. Think of a deep internal infection. Surgeons cannot simply cut it out without causing catastrophic damage. So, they turn to extreme heat. Specialized probes, heated to intense temperatures, are guided to the site. The infected tissue is not cut out. It is burned away, seared in an attempt to sterilize the area and create a barrier of scar tissue to contain the threat. It is a destructive process, but destruction is the point. It is the destruction of the infection before it destroys the host. This principle extends to all forms of surgery. Every incision, every internal procedure, carries the specter of subsequent infection, so the techniques are adapted for maximum speed and minimal exposure. The surgeon's skill is measured not just by their ability to repair, but by their ability to preemptively eliminate the threat of an invisible enemy. The very philosophy of intervention shifts from preservation to a stark necessary triage, where saving a life often means sacrificing a part of it. This is the new geometry of survival, calculated in flesh and bone. Now, let's talk about the front line. If we cannot always defeat an infection from within, how do we prevent it from ever gaining a foothold? The answer lies in creating an impenetrable shield, a zone of absolute sterility. This is a world where the science of destruction is focused not on the systemic, but on the immediate, the topical. The search for new and more powerful antiseptics becomes one of the most critical fields of research. Imagine a surface, a surgical instrument, a hospital floor, the skin before an incision. In our timeline, we clean it. Here, we wage chemical warfare on it. The goal is to create compounds that are ruthlessly toxic to microbial life, but minimally damaging to human tissue. This is a delicate balance, a constant trade-off between efficacy and safety. Researchers are not just improving on alcohol and iodine, they are engineering complex molecules in laboratories. These are next-generation antiseptics designed for specific purposes. Some form persistent films on the skin, providing a lasting barrier for hours after application. Others are engineered to be activated by body heat, releasing their antimicrobial payload only when and where they are needed. Still others are designed with a positive ionic charge, irresistibly drawn to and rupturing the negatively charged cell walls of bacteria. But the challenge goes deeper than the surface. How do you sterilize a deep puncture wound, where bacteria have already been introduced into the tissue? This is where delivery systems become as important as the antiseptics themselves. Scientists develop advanced gels and foams that can be injected into a wound cavity, expanding to contact every surface. They design nanoscale carriers, microscopic capsules that release their disinfecting cargo slowly, maintaining a lethal environment for pathogens over days. In this reality, the act of cleaning a cut is not a simple gesture. It is a calculated, potentially life-saving application of advanced chemistry. The very air in operating rooms and isolation wards could be filtered through antiseptic misting systems. We build our fortifications not from stone and steel, but from chlorine, quaternary ammonium, and custom-designed molecules, creating sterile islands in a microbial sea. But what if the enemy itself could be turned? What if we could deploy a precision weapon that seeks and destroys only the harmful invaders, leaving everything else untouched? This isn't science fiction, it is the reality of an alternative path medicine was forced to take. Look into a microscope, and you will see a perpetual war playing out on a microscopic scale. On one side, the bacteria. On the other, their ancient natural predators, bacteriophages. These are viruses, but not the kind that make you sick. These are highly specialized hunters. Each strain evolved to target and lyse one and only one specific type of bacteria. Imagine a key that fits only a single lock. That is the relationship between a phage and its bacterial prey. In a world without broad-spectrum antibiotics, these tiny assassins become our most sophisticated allies. The development of this therapy would not be a simple matter. It would require a global scientific effort. Picture vast libraries, not of books, but of viruses. Scientists would be engaged in a continuous process of discovery and cataloging, isolating new phages from every environment imaginable, from the soil beneath our feet, from the water of lakes and oceans, even from the sewage of our cities, where the battle between bacteria and phages rages incessantly. Each new pathogenic bacterium that emerges would trigger a race to find its viral counterpart. These collections, these phage banks, would become as critical as blood banks, stored in cryogenic vaults and distributed to hospitals worldwide. A patient presenting with a resistant staph infection wouldn't receive a pill. They would receive a custom-tailored cocktail of staph-specific phages delivered intravenously or directly to the wound site. The treatment is elegant, self-replicating. As the bacteria multiply, so do the phages, until the last host cell is destroyed, and then they simply fade away. This is medicine not as a blunt force, but as a masterfully targeted strike, a silent, invisible army we recruit to fight our battles for us. The entire paradigm of infection control shifts from chemical bombardment to biological espionage and assassination. Now, let's talk about a different kind of defense. One that is harvested not from a lab, but from the human body itself. When prevention fails and an infection takes hold, medicine turns to a living, breathing arsenal, the immune system of others. Imagine a global network as vital as the power grid, dedicated to collecting, processing, and distributing immunity. This is the world of therapeutic sera and immunoglobulins. The principle is ancient, using the antibodies of those who have survived a disease to treat those who are currently fighting it. But in this reality, it is not a folk remedy. It is a cornerstone of high-tech medicine, industrialized to a massive scale. Think of it as a form of crowdsourced immunity, a literal transfusion of defensive experience. The process begins with donors, individuals who have recovered from a specific, dangerous bacterial infection become uniquely valuable. Their blood plasma, rich with highly targeted antibodies, is a life-saving resource. Donor centers would not just be for whole blood, they would be for convalescent plasma, with donors screened for a catalog of diseases they have overcome. But human survivors are not the only source. Picture specialized farms, not for food, but for antibody production. Large animals, often horses, are carefully and humanely injected with inactivated pathogens or bacterial toxins. Their robust immune systems respond by producing vast quantities of antibodies, which are then harvested from their blood in a continuous controlled cycle. These products, antitoxins for diseases like tetanus and diphtheria, immunoglobulins for stubborn staph infections, become essential medicines. Vials of these yellowish liquids, purified and standardized, fill the refrigerated warehouses of pharmaceutical companies. A single dose is the concentrated defense of 1,000 donors or a single powerful animal ready to be transferred to a patient whose own body is losing the fight. This creates a profound interdependence. A healthy person is not just healthy for themselves. They are a potential reservoir of medicine for the entire community. Donation becomes a supreme civic duty, and the economy of blood and plasma is as critical as the economy of any other precious commodity. It is a system built on a simple, powerful truth. The most effective weapon against a pathogen is often the memory of a past victory over it. So we have our targeted biological weapons and our advanced chemical shields. But the most effective strategy in any war is to avoid the battle altogether. This leads us to the most profound shift in daily life, the primacy of prevention. Imagine a society where the concept of public hygiene is not a recommendation, but a rigid doctrine enforced by architecture, technology, and social agreement. Let's start with the places where the sick are treated, the hospitals. They would not be the open, accessible centers we know. They would be fortresses designed for containment. The entrance to every ward is an airlock-style decontamination chamber. UVC lights, lethal to microorganisms, hum continuously in ventilation shafts and above doorways, sanitizing the air and surfaces with invisible radiation. Materials are chosen for one property above all else: non-porosity. Copper and its alloys, known for their self-sterilizing properties, would be everywhere, on door handles, bed rails, and IV poles. Now step outside the hospital. This mindset permeates every facet of existence. The simple act of breathing in a crowded space becomes a calculated risk. Therefore, the wearing of high-filtration respirators in public transit, in schools, in theaters, becomes as commonplace and unremarkable as wearing shoes. It is not a choice. It is a social responsibility. Public infrastructure is redesigned for minimal contact. Doors are automatic. Payment is touchless. Social distancing is not an emergency measure. It is a permanent built-in feature of urban planning. People would instinctively leave space between themselves in queues. The handshake, the hug, the casual pat on the back, These gestures of connection become recognized as potential vectors of death, and they fade from custom, replaced by bows, nods, or simply maintaining one's distance. The very rhythm of life slows to accommodate constant ritualized cleansing. You would pass through sanitation arches, misting a fine antiseptic aerosol when entering key buildings. Your home would have a designated decontamination area near the entrance. In this world, cleanliness is not next to godliness, it is next to survivability. The society that emerges is not agoraphobic, but it is meticulously organized, its routines and structures all engineered towards one single unifying goal: to create a barrier between the human body and the pathogenic world. Now, let's step back from the laboratories and hospitals and observe the society that has been forged by this perpetual state of biological siege. The psychological and behavioral landscape of humanity would be fundamentally rewritten, not by decree, but by ingrained collective instinct. Imagine a world where the most common greeting is not a handshake, but a respectful nod from a distance. The concept of personal space expands dramatically, becoming a non-negotiable buffer zone, a mandatory moat of safety around every individual. Crowds are avoided. Public gatherings are meticulously regulated, with attendance limits and mandatory protective gear. The sound of a cough or a sneeze in a public space does not elicit a polite "bless you." It triggers an immediate reflexive dispersal of people, a flight response as instinctive as any in the animal kingdom. Observe the structure of daily life. Residential architecture changes. Homes are designed with decontamination vestibules, becoming literal sanctuaries from the outside world. Ventilation systems in buildings are not for comfort alone, but for survival, featuring aggressive filtration and UV sterilization. The very rhythm of the year is dictated not just by seasons, but by disease prevalence. During the annual respiratory season, or outbreaks of new bacterial strains, a form of voluntary, seasonal hibernation occurs. Non-essential travel ceases. People work remotely if they can. Families stock supplies and retreat into their tightly knit units, minimizing external contact. This fosters a society that is both globally connected digitally, yet intensely local and clan-oriented physically. Trust is extended cautiously. New relationships are vetted not just for social compatibility, but for medical history and hygiene habits. The world becomes a collection of interconnected but distinct bubbles, each prioritizing the integrity of its own biological security above all else. The defining characteristic of this civilization is not paranoia, but a profound, calculated, and universal vigilance. A constant, low-grade awareness of the invisible threats that linger on every surface and in every breath of air, shaping every interaction and every institution. We've built barriers, harnessed viruses, and transferred immunity. But the ultimate frontier in this war is the source of life's code itself. This is where the battle moves to the most fundamental level, the genome. Imagine if we could redesign our own biological defenses or create permanent living factories for antimicrobial compounds. This is the goal of advanced genetic engineering, a field propelled by necessity into a central role. The first path is augmentation. Scientists are not just looking to treat infection, they are looking to re-engineer the body's first line of defense. Research focuses on the innate immune system, the ancient non-specific guard that forms our initial response. Through precise gene editing techniques, researchers attempt to enhance the phagocytic cells, the Pac-Man of our immune system, making them more aggressive, more efficient at engulfing and destroying invaders. Other projects aim to bolster the physical barriers, modifying skin cells to secrete stronger natural antimicrobial peptides, creating a constant, low-level defensive shield on the very surface of the body. This is not a treatment. It is an upgrade, a permanent rewriting of the human body's defensive protocols to make it inherently more resilient. The second path is synthesis. Look at the humble, common gut bacterium. In this world, it becomes a platform, a biological factory. Scientists splice genes from other organisms, genes that code for powerful, naturally occurring antimicrobial peptides found in frogs, insects, or even other bacteria, into the genome of these harmless laboratory strains. These modified organisms are then cultivated in vast bioreactors, where they dutifully produce and excrete these potent compounds, which are harvested and purified into new classes of drugs. But the vision goes further. What if these engineered microbes could be deployed inside the patient? Imagine a probiotic therapy, where a patient swallows a capsule containing bacteria designed to colonize the gut or the skin, where they continuously manufacture and release their targeted antimicrobial payload directly at the site, providing a persistent internal defense force. This turns the body's own microbiome into a defensive organ. This is a world where medicine shifts from attacking sickness to proactively architecting biological systems, both human and microbial, to resist it from the ground up. The line between therapy and evolution begins to blur as we take direct, deliberate control of our own biological destiny in the face of an unrelenting microscopic threat. Now let's zoom out to a global scale, to the movement of people and goods that defines a modern civilization. In this world, the very concept of borders has been redefined. They are no longer just political or geographic lines. They are the world's most critical immunological firewalls. Imagine an international airport. It does not just feature security checkpoints. It is dominated by biocontainment screening facilities. Upon arrival, every passenger is funneled through a series of automated stations. Thermal and chemical sensors scan for fever and the volatile organic compound signature of known infections. A mandatory health declaration is not a formality. It is a legally binding document, digitally linked to a universal medical passport. This passport contains an individual's complete immunization history, a log of all major illnesses survived, and their current serological status, a measure of the antibody levels in their blood. Travel between continents requires a meticulous and lengthy process. Approval is not guaranteed. Individuals from regions experiencing a novel bacterial outbreak may face immediate and total travel bans. Approved travelers, upon arrival, do not simply collect their luggage and leave. They enter a mandatory quarantine period in specialized facilities adjacent to ports and airports. These are not prisons, but sterile, monitored environments where individuals are observed for a predetermined incubation period. Their health status continuously monitored by remote sensors. Any sign of infection results in immediate isolation and treatment, preventing the pathogen from crossing the border. This system extends to commerce. Shipping containers are subjected to aggressive antiseptic fogging. International mail passes through irradiation chambers. The free and rapid movement that characterized globalization is replaced by a slow, deliberate, and heavily regulated process. The world is intricately connected by data and information, flowing at the speed of light, but the movement of human bodies is slow, cautious, and treated as a potential biological hazard. The planet is a network of interconnected but defensively autonomous zones, where the primary goal of international policy is not just economic or political stability, but absolute, unyielding epidemiological security. This is the ultimate consequence: a global community forever balancing the human desire for connection with the immutable reality of contagion.